Hello and welcome back after a prolonged hiatus to NYANCAST, the podcast where we go over the critically acclaimed animation series Nyan Neko Sugar Girls. Today we're going to cover episode 5 and 6 of the series, of the mainline series, and I am once again joined by Olivia.
Howdy.
Rob.
Hello.
And Yellow. Do you guys have any thoughts before we jump right into episode 5, or do we just get into it?
It has been way too long, guys.
Get right into it.
My first note I have is the opening of this episode. Skipping the intro, if anyone has anything to say about the intro. It seems like it always comes back to the intro. There's a lot woven in there.
Have we commented on the fact that Hitoshi-san has two mouths? Yeah.
Oh yeah, of course, going back to his kind of two-faced nature.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, you're right. I do remember saying that now.
Yes.
It's been like 3 months. We're like, have we said this before yet? Are we ever getting things?
Exactly. I'm not sure what I commented on anymore.
But that's why we got to keep it fresh. We got to keep things. Things fresh here.
You are correct. I agree.
So this opens on a character in bed, which is a real motif in the show. This time it's Raku, which kind of signals that this is going to be a kind of Raku-based arc. It's been in kind of a cycle of Raku,
most of them
Hitoshi,
are,
Koneko.
to be fair.
She is the main character.
Yeah, so that makes sense.
But recently the series has been focused a lot on Hitoshi and his
it's like saying, The Hobbit is a very Bilbo-centric book. This chapter of The Hobbit's very Bilbo-centric.
Well, again, Robbie, the last few episodes have been relatively focused on Hitoshi and his finding himself.
I guess you're right. Yeah,
yes.
That's kind of minor.
But again, when that was about him, it opened on him in bed, and it has been a cycle of Raku in bed, Hitoshi in bed, Koneko in bed, and now we're back to Raku waking up to start the episode.
Mm-hmm.
She wakes up to a phone call. I found this phone interesting because even in the time of the series, landlines were pretty outdated, which kind of makes this more of a period piece, if what I'm reading is correctly, or it's some kind of part of interesting world building.
Deeper. This could represent the fact that this is post-war Japan is poor now because of the American influence that it has on it.
Okay, I can see that.
It's kind of destroying their economy. So it's kind of like how in communist countries they had to use by the time the 80s roll around, they were still using cars from the 50s and stuff.
But it seems like Japan post-World War II is kind of on the cutting edge of technology. Is this more of a...
Especially with efficiency, yeah.
Is this more of an extreme end?
For the rich that are close to the Americans, but the average person...
I see.
Maybe these Neko girls have restrictions. Maybe they're racist in condition where they're not allowed to have access to these.
They're second-class citizens. That's true. That will tie into something possibly in the next episode that I had about. But yeah, that is a good point. Them possibly being second-class citizens. And Raku, when she answers this phone, she's in her undergarments, which puts us in a very intimate scene with
definitely
the very child-minded character. I found this kind of uncomfortable.
It's troubling. Yeah, I agree. I was going to say that.
But I do think it was kind of important. I think the scene served a purpose, because when she answers the phone, she thinks it's Hitoshi, initially, which kind of shows us her feelings for him. If you're catching what I'm saying, if I'm being clear.
So because she answered the phone half naked, thinking it's Hitoshi, that's supposed to symbolize her anticipation.
Not exactly that.
In a way, but also because after she finds out it's not Koneko, her very feminine features that were exaggerated, prominent and exaggerated.
They shift to being very angular.
Yeah, they shift to something more angular, less feminine, right after it cuts back from Koneko's shots. It's a reverse shot over a phone.
But is that intentional, do you think, or
absolutely?
Everything's intentional.
It's too perfect.
It could be an animation, like a difference between animators or studios or whatever. I don't really know how that works.
From what I understand of how this show was made, it was all done largely by a single creator. She was very involved with everything from the storyboarding to the animation to the soundtrack to the voice acting.
Like a one woman show.
Not entirely. There was likely some other
voice actors.
some of the appeal of the show, I think I've said this before, comes from kind of the mysterious creation of it. The creator is kind of a recluse on the internet and out in the outside world. It's hard to pin down.
I mean, as we said before, they didn't do it for the money. They did it for the art.
Absolutely.
The passion.
Now, Koneko's on the phone, and what she's asking is, or telling, more like Raku, is that they're going to go to the vet, which I thought was kind of a big step in world building, because it implies to be that cat girl, Nyan Neko Sugar Girl anatomy is much closer to that of an actual feline than it is to a human being.
And then I'll go to actual doctor.
Or either that, or that could represent how, they're still seen as animals by society when in fact they are people. But they are forced to go to vets even though they are, humans.
Yeah, I think that the show gives us kind of a choice to either choose the view that I was proposing, where it's a much more like actual scientific view, or a much more metaphorical view like you and Olivia have been proposing.
It's not even a metaphorical view. It's just saying how like life is for them.
Or it could be an anticipation, because I think these Nyan Neko girls know that when they don't feel well, they revert back to their original form. So maybe going to the vet was an anticipation of her possibly transforming back. And then what's a human doctor going to do with a cat?
To the original form, they're born like that.
Yes. I think Olivia's
trying to imply their actual
ahead
cats
of herself here.
People, or
we'll wait till episodes 7 and 8 to get into the cat transformation.
Of course.
But this is definitely a possibility. But I think, judging by ahead in episodes 7 and 8, by how shocked Koneko is about the transformation, I think that it's definitely irregular.
A very rare occurrence. It's probably undocumented, if anything.
Maybe, which is more proof to that this doesn't happen very often. So
how often do you get rid of it?
Now, the next part of the episode, it seems like Raku enjoys going to the vet. I forgot to add that, which is interesting. The next part,
she's still childlike, so they get the lollipop at the end of the visit.
Oh, they sure do. Now, the next part of the episode is them walking to the vet, and they bump into Hitoshi on the way there, and he is he's largely, he's kind of his friendly old self, despite the kind of grim world surrounding him. Raku's inner monologue right before this was very concerned, and it was palpable in its worry, but then he shows up, and despite her own inner turmoil, Raku still continues to hold him in high regard, calling him so sugoi when she meets him, which is almost disturbing. Her lack of self-regard at times.
I mean, she's childish, so she's not thinking.
She's childish, but you'd think that would make her more selfish, right?
Well, not when it comes to someone that they hold in high regard.
Children are very honest about their feelings about somebody.
Yeah,
that's true. That's what makes her such an interesting lens to see the world through in this series.
Yes.
Hitoshi has while they're trying to talk to him, Hitoshi has another homoerotic vision of his captor. This one is, in my opinion, one of the most strange, because usually it's like he's seeing him in something, or him around him in part of the scenery, but here
it's just a straight up daydream. It's
just a daydream.
Well, I mean, they always are.
Yes, but usually it somehow blends into the scenery or the plot.
It blends into reality. He sees someone who he thinks might be him, and he imagines him there. This one's just
what are you talking about?
Yeah. For example, in the next episode, he sees someone driving by, and he hallucinates.
You're saying the opposite of what I thought you were saying.
In this part, it's almost like it's intentional here. Usually, it's like he's looking over his shoulder and it's out of the corner of his eye. But in the middle of conversation with his sick friend, he decides to just have a homoerotic daydream about his lover, which.
So you think he decided to do that?
Yes, I think it was more of a choice.
He can't control, you think?
Exactly. Other times it feels like that, as in the next episode with the truck. But in this instance, it was kind of a wake up call. I think Hitoshi as a character is getting more sinister post kidnapping than he was before.
Yeah, definitely.
Which is concerning. especially this is a hard subject to broach. This might have negative implications for the portrayal of homosexual characters in this series, but I will defend this. This is a hill I will die on. It is not. I don't think it is. Overall, I think.
I mean, it's Stockholm syndrome. That's completely normal to go through.
But
for
Hitoshi
people in that kind of situation.
takes this layer of abuse he's been under, and he's pushing it. He's almost perpetuating it. He becomes quite manipulative in the next few episodes, almost just completely apathetic or outright happy, it almost seems like, at his friends' misfortune. His friends, who I think, as we discussed before, were kind of his mask of heterosexuality he used.
You're never the same after an important event like that. You leave a part of yourself with it.
Yes, but he gained a kind of twisted infatuation with a man who violently kidnapped him. And
I mean, how is this any different than like Beauty and the Beast? You know, it's kind of the same.
Beauty and the Beast is a children's movie. This show is very grounded in reality.
This show is beyond just a children's show / movie.
I just don't agree. I just
think that the subplot of Hitoshi's homoerotic fantasy is almost like fan service.
That's possible.
Because 11 years ago, I guarantee it, the very popular romantic genre of yaoi was probably sparking up around then.
Yeah.
So this is probably a good bit of fan service, I'd have to guess.
Well, I would agree with you, but if we look at the clip, first of all, you don't even see his kidnapper's hands. Whereas if this was a yaoi, especially during this time period, his hands would be very large and prominently displayed.
Well, I mean, wasn't it just starting around this time period, though, like she said?
No, this was 2010. I'm pretty sure during 2010.
A lot of the critically acclaimed ones came out around 2009.
Genre,
exactly. Ouran High School Host Club is a good example. I know that's light because they're all gay but also attracted to the main character. What a complex show.
But you ought to look at Hitoshi's hands as they're gradually probably getting
bigger.
Increasingly
I see. At around during this time when he waves to his friends, his hands are large. You're right. This may be a yaoi fan service, but I do think it serves his character pretty well. Just as Raku's fan service at the beginning of the episode served quite the point.
They really do have something for everyone here.
They do.
Indeed.
So Hitoshi is greeted by Koneko first, and it seems like she seems to be aware of Hitoshi's fantasies, and she generally seems to know more than she lets on just overall.
I think maybe she thinks that it's for Raku, though, because, you know, there's no way that she can know what's going on in his head. She can just tell that he's happy for some reason, you know?
Yes, but I think she reads people very well. It's why she's kind of the master manipulator of the series, in my opinion. She seems to be almost omnipotent or just very intuitive.
I don't think I disagree with that.
You think I'm giving her too much credit?
Yes.
Give me a counter argument. Give me a counter argument, buddy.
Why? Where did you get the idea that she's omnipotent?
Because when she's talking to Hitoshi every time, it's often okay. This might be a little too out there. I'll talk about this next episode when we talk about Koneko's appearance. But he often has fantasies around Koneko about his kidnapper. And she often seems to understand what's going on and shake him out of it or be like aware.
But she doesn't know that it's for the kidnapper, is my point.
Okay.
For all she knows, it could be about her or...
I think once we get to the end of the series, it might prove my point. But for now, let's table this. Let's table this. Yeah. But I do think Koneko knows more than she lets on, and I do think she's generally in control of most situations, which is why Raku's sickness is so almost traumatizing for her.
Because it's uncontrollable.
It is uncontrollable. Especially Raku, who she's cared for an indeterminate but seemingly forever amount of time. Yes.
They could have just met when they were eating mochi ice cream in that first episode. We have no idea.
It seems like they lived together at the time,
Together
but
for a long time.
yes.
They live together. Why would they be calling each other with landlines?
Well, yeah, they don't live together though.
They just
They-
have free reign of each other's house.
Yeah,
And Koneko
yeah.
is often at Raku's house. Often. She's over there making her tea. Green tea.
No one has
specifically.
a
Hey,
job.
milk ice cream, baby.
No, well,
That's a good
Vetsama
point.
Vetsama has a job.
Well, yeah.
But
We,
that's
we haven't really
not a
gotten to
Neko
that
girl.
song yet.
Okay.
Though,
Yeah,
halfway.
exactly. You're kind of going.
The scene with Hitoshi ends without resolution. It just cuts to them being at the vet, and domesticated animals exist, first of all, which implies something about the Neko girls, maybe, and the origins of them become a little bit muddled. If cats are just cats, then how do you get a Neko girl? I think we'll go over this in our extended universe episode we'll do post the series, but
Okay. Cool.
it's definitely food for thought. And Raku, unlike a normal cat, is enamored with both the Inus and the Nekos that are in the office with her. She's
It's dogs, right? Inus.
yeah.
Okay.
She's enamored with them. And then there's even like a whole pan over to emphasize that domestic animals exist, and the Neko girls go to the same healthcare facility as literal dogs. So I think this does definitely support the idea that they are second-class citizens.
Yeah. I agree.
And it could also be that what is it? The Neko girls are just so new to society that they don't have their own facilities yet. That they could be in between humans and animals.
I mean,
but
like,
there aren't
okay,
any
but if
specific. There
if
aren't
they
any
were
specific
valued-
specialists for Neko girls at all. So they have to come with the next best thing, being I guess vets.
Okay, but to be fair, if they were really valued by society, they wouldn't have to go to a literal regular vet.
Society takes a while to change. Culture does too. It takes time for these things to change.
Exactly.
It doesn't
but
happen
that's my
overnight.
point. They're still acknowledging that they are, in fact, human beings and not
Are they?
animals.
That's why their clothes
we
don't.
don't know that,
their
though.
clothes
Closer
don't
to
accommodate
humans
a
than they are
tail.
to animals. I mean,
Well,
they
if
look
they're
like
closer to
human
humans,
cat
then how come they
ears.
don't go to a regular doctor then?
Exactly, that's my point.
Instead, they're going to a nurse, or not a nurse, excuse me, a vet.
Exactly.
an
Yeah,
animal
that's
doctor.
my point. They're regular
Not-
people.
like, yeah.
They should be
Also,
going
not
to
to
a regular
mention is that
doctor.
they apparently don't have clothes that accommodate their tails.
Exactly. When you see them
That
get up,
too.
I had a note about this. That's a great point, Olivia. When they get up, you see that their clothes are not modified. They have to their
Exactly.
tails lift their
You
skirts
guys are just
up.
proving my points right now.
Oh, I know. I agree with you, Rob.
Oh, okay.
Yellow's point was what I was trying to make at the beginning, where they're just closer to cats, and vets are the closest thing being able to care for them.
Closer to cats. All they have is tails and ears.
Yeah,
That's
But
it.
they have the ability to transform into
It could be a
cats.
whole different thing with
Okay,
their.
but you're getting ahead of
the rest their
yourself,
biology
and-
as well.
I don't think that
Again,
was a
I
willing
think-
transformation.
I believe if the point was being made that they are cats more than people, the series would kind of go over that. But it's much more cerebral and metaphorical and like trying to be, I think, allegorical.
I see.
So
You use big words, so you must be right.
precisely, yes.
Of course. That's how science works nowadays.
Yeah. Anyway, moving on.
This is the first appearance of Vetsama, who is a character near and dear to my heart. I think she's probably not the most interesting character, but I appreciate her. She adds a lot to the show.
I definitely a lot. There's quite a lot to digest there.
Her first appearance, she's the first new character in a good while, and it's just abrupt and jarring that she appears. Her sound design is
On top.
unique. It is
Yeah. I definitely agree.
it emphasizes how jarring and abrupt it's supposed to be. There is a new person infiltrating this kind of sphere of people.
I think it also represents the announcement that she has to make.
Okay, it's actually kind of interesting that you mentioned that the abruptness of her sound design, because when the kidnapper came into play, Hitoshi was screaming. So whenever a new character is introduced, there seems to be a loud, obnoxious noise to indicate, hey,
You're
something new's
right.
changing.
Yes, the sounds in this
Especially
show
characters
are
that aren't
important.
really related to the main three at all.
I've always been impressed by
Pre-
the sound design in this show.
The sound design is fantastic.
I mean,
Top
yeah,
quality.
For
I think
2010,
the writing is also quite good. I mean, frankly, I can't get the chilling line of you can't take me. I don't even know who you are out of my head at night. It's truly haunting.
Oh, yeah. That series, that arc is almost excessively dark, and then the show just picks up again with this cat girl getting a terminal illness. The show after those first few slice of life episodes is just a spiral into tragedy, and I think
Yeah,
that
exactly.
it's definitely
It shows
very
how
moving.
quickly life
That
can
is
change.
definitely the classic formula of slice of life. There is a few episodes of good fun between all of the characters, and at the end,
Things
it
just start
gradually
going
grows
wrong.
into a tragedy. So it just makes you feel
Very
awful.
very similar to
Yeah.
Madoka Magica or
Clanad.
Clannad, Higurashi when they cry. Very
Yeah, very much
I was
so.
gonna mention that, but I couldn't remember the name, so I didn't say it.
yes, all series that follow a similar formula, but in my opinion, um Nyan Neko Girls does it best because
Oh,
in all of those
definitely.
shows, it feels like there's a tipping point. It feels like something inherently shifts in the show. But with Nyan Neko Sugar Girls, the darkness is so just right at the underbelly that when it happens, you don't feel like you're watching something different. You don't feel like something fundamentally changed. You're watching the same show. You're in the same reality. You're just seeing the worst side of things. And I think that's kind of powerful.
I think
It
yeah.
is powerful. A lot of writers have a hard time establishing that, especially when there's something with more than one season. The second season, they never seem to get it right the same way.
Mhm.
But here, they're the split in half, kind of like a part one and part two. They do it. Chef's kiss.
I definitely agree with what Olivia is saying there.
Yes. Back to the scene we were talking about. Raku is sitting on the counter that she's on in the vet's office, kind of cat-like. I thought that was an interesting detail. And when the vet asks her questions or talks to her, first of all, she denies having any
Ailment, really?
ailment, and she seems
I
to
don't think she
credit
wants to bother her friends.
Toshi and
obviously.
Koneko entirely with taking care of her. So it does seem like that she has very low self-esteem.
She doesn't think she's valuable enough to be saved.
No,
From her
not at all.
sickness.
Also, the nurse is licking a red lollipop, which is kind of it seems like it might be a motif.
Really, that's really
series.
fitting that I said that. Then I actually don't remember that.
Yes,
That's-
yes.
Also, I want to interject here to side note. We keep on saying nurse, but it's not actually nurse. It's actually vet.
I'm sorry,
We-
Yellow.
We should make a point of
Um,
that. We keep
Yeah,
on messing that
agree.
up.
I
I
have
know that we had a comment from someone about that. A
the
few
issue
months
is
ago.
that I've been calling this character that for years.
How many years now? It's been way too
since I
long.
first watched the show. I don't know. It's just kind of a pet name, something like that. It's gonna be hard to break, but they're
Yeah,
completely right.
I think calling her nurse is fine.
And speaking of Vet Sama, that honorific says a lot about her character. Sama is almost like it's super respectful. It's almost like something you would call like a lord or like someone of super high standing, someone you're respecting, like to the max.
Someone in
And
the medical
I think
field.
the show partially addresses why she's called that, possibly like later on in the later episodes. But we'll get
Yes.
into that later.
But I still think that's interesting that they respect her so highly. I think it might say something about how she treats these second-class citizens. I think maybe she's like a
Civil rights activist, perhaps.
yeah, or she just treats these second-class cat girls with incredible dignity and hospitality, even though she is a vet.
Yeah,
And she
Or
does.
maybe she just has saved a lot of lives, and that's another reason.
That's what I think. Also in this scene, Hitoshi just kind of appears. Because that first scene ended so abruptly without any resolution, this is the first indication that he actually came with them, which I thought also added to kind of the uneasiness of the scene.
I mean, it can kind of imply that if you see Hitoshi at all, that he's probably going to be with them the rest of the episode.
Yeah.
That's a good point. But that is a good point. But still, he wasn't shown in the waiting room or in any scenes
That is
following the one
true.
where he fantasized. And I just thought it was interesting for him to just appear in the room again. I think that was intentional. I think it was like he's here. He is just present in these people's lives.
He's
And
present there. Yeah.
yeah. Now they run some tests. And Hitoshi just kind of smiles blankly and stares at the nurse.
Not many emotions there.
I think he's more likely staring at the syringe. I think Hitoshi is kind of twisted. I think he's no, I think he's just I think he's kind of he might. I don't think there's any indication he's a drug addict. If anything,
Why else would he be looking at the
Honestly,
syringe?
I think he's just staring off into space. He might be daydreaming again with another cutscene.
Yeah.
oh, that's
could be.
true. So after the tests are run, it comes back that Raku has rabies, which is a deeply psychological disorder, something that greatly affects the brain. And we will see that come out in this series as it becomes even more cerebral in the following episodes. And when the nurse asks her what could possibly have caused this illness, Raku
She has no idea.
refuses
Yeah,
to.
I mean,
either her
what would
memory
she
is
say?
slipping, or she refuses to blame the squirrel.
Man, yeah, that's more evidence to holding it too close. She doesn't want to acknowledge that it hurt her, just like her nation doesn't want to acknowledge that.
I don't think that
their
she's.
relationship
I
with
don't
America
think
has
she
hurt
has
them.
the. I don't think she has the intelligence to correlate her getting bit by a squirrel with rabies.
I disagree with that point very much.
I think, well, the nurse specifically makes that correlation for her. She tells her, I believe she tells her what can cause rabies. I think she says something bit you, or she goes over that, and Raku kind of stares at her blankly, and either again her memory is slipping, she's already afflicted, or she's choosing not to blame the squirrel, or again her intelligence could be that low, but I find that dubious.
Yeah.
I believe that she just doesn't want to blame the squirrel.
It could
And we
be.
are
I'm
the
not
squirrel,
sure that.
so
Yeah, we are the squirrel. I'm not sure if we want to start, because I don't think that the writer would make an illusion or a correlation there with potentially low intelligence. I feel like it's more than just, she just doesn't understand this because of her childlike mind and she just doesn't get it. I feel like that there's more behind it than just that.
Well, a childlike mind, I mean, what IQ is calculation, and it has to do with mental age, I believe. Hold on.
Okay, get the working definition of IQ.
It has to do with, it's dividing a person's mental age score. It's by the person's chronological age. So I think
their intelligence
Raku
quotient
definitely has a lower IQ than standard, because we've gone over so many times her mental age being very low for what is assumed to be like a 20-something cat girl, unless they age very differently, but I don't think that was ever implied.
even if they did, they would age faster, if anything.
Exactly. And then IQ it would be hard to apply like human intelligence tests to animal people.
Yeah,
but Koneko
true.
is clearly smarter than her, on like a traditional scale, on like a neurotypical scale.
Anyway, yeah, since we are the squirrel, I think that's what they're trying to say. That's my opinion.
Oh, again, with the Japanese refusing to acknowledge that they're harming their nation by stopping imperialism or stopping isolationism. What exactly is your stance?
point.
They
Imperialism?
should be isolationist.
I see.
That's what I believe. This show is trying to say, at least.
So you guys think this is the physical embodiment of the society of America,
that's what I
Japan?
believe this arc is supposed to represent, personally.
The infantilized, exaggerated, featured cat girl Raku is what you're saying kind of represents Japan as a nation.
Also, just the nation in the story in general, with the Americanisms that they have.
Yeah.
Or no, they don't even have Americanism. They speak English.
And a little bit of Spanish as well.
They kind of do a blend of it.
So like and this supposedly takes place in Japan according to Hitoshi. So
Yes.
just the world too also represents what the writers are trying to say. But in
I
case you
see.
didn't get it, they also have Raku-chan being an embodiment of this phenomenon.
That's definitely out there, but I think this show is definitely rich in
I
symbolism
don't
and
see how
metaphor.
you can interpret the show in any other way. I honestly don't see how that is possible.
Well, some people don't believe that isolationism is best. I think
That's funny. I
without
don't see how
Japan,
anyone could say that.
I think without Japan opening its borders, we wouldn't have this show. And I don't want to think about a world where Nyan Neko Sugar Girls doesn't exist.
I don't know. Maybe it would be for the best if their nation was better off. It's like
For the best?
it's good political satire, but they shouldn't have had to made it to begin with. You know what I mean?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes, but maybe that's selfish of me to wish.
Yeah, I very
country.
selfish.
But Nyan Neko Sugar Girls is something that has affected my life so deeply, and I think that sacrificing just one small island nation is worth it.
Oh wow, that's a really bad take. Okay, but we should move on. This isn't even about the show anymore, so we should get back to the show.
Do you think that Japanese imperialism and American influence on the Japanese people is about Nyan Neko Sugar Girls? Rob,
Yeah.
Okay.
Moving on.
Moving on. So the first person to comfort Raku after she gets the news that she is terminally ill is Koneko. Hitoshi does comfort her.
Okay. Hitoshi looks happy.
Yes.
Like, is that just me that thinks that?
His inflection, his demeanor, it's all the same. I don't really think he cares that she's dying. He seems
I think
almost
he looked
happy.
joyful even.
Yes.
He was smiling. He wasn't just apathetic. He was smiling.
The crying during this scene is heart-wrenching. It's a
It
desperate
it's
cry.
very hard to watch.
And it reaches a crescendo and it even carries into the following scene. She is devastated. She's going to die. I don't know if Raku has ever faced her own mortality before, but she is now, and it is it's intense. It's one of the most intense scenes in the show, probably barred by the ending and the squirrel attack.
I think this scene puts a squirrel bite to shame in its intensity.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I mean, what's more intense? Your take is just so funny. What's more intense? Literally dying or being bit,
Well, the bite is what causes the death. The bite
you
is...
didn't know that at the time.
You didn't know that at the time, but we, the audience, did. And it definitely...
I didn't.
And when we're watching it, well, we do now, but when we're watching that scene, as we went over in the last podcast episode, that scene meant a lot more extra outside of the actual scene. It was weeping for a nation. It was weeping for
Exactly.
lost innocence. It was a scene that meant a lot more, in my opinion. This one is much more character focused. It's less. From
the perspective of characters of the show and your average watcher, this would be more intense. Your average watcher.
Yeah, but I don't think the acting is as intense. I don't think the acting is as powerful.
Yeah.
Squirrel scene. But if you're talking about if you're talking about narrative intensity, I'll give this one to you, Rob. Definitely.
Thank you.
Hitoshi, his support of her is telling her that he's here for her. And he emphasizes this line, know that. You know that.
Like a hypnosis.
Yeah, that's kind of creepy, man.
I also agree. I think her reliance on him and his security under his mask of heterosexuality that has been continuously slipping lately.
Yeah, I mean, he knows if he's protecting someone of the opposite sex, protecting them. A very masculine quality.
Also, during the scene when she's talking to Hitoshi, Raku has stars in her, which I think sort of represent. I'm pretty sure I made a point about that earlier. The stars in the intro relating to Hitoshi, now the stars in Raku's eyes relating to Hitoshi. It's kind of a symbol.
It is,
a recurring symbol. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
This is recurring
Almost like a
symbol.
galaxy.
Yes,
The Hitoshi galaxy.
Hitoshi
And I
contains
wish I lived there.
multitudes.
Moving on.
Hitoshi's motive with the stars is immediately followed by another
mean
motive of the series, which is mochi ice cream and green tea. Koneko comes in, halting Raku's confession to Hitoshi. It seemed like she was going to confess in this scene with mochi ice
I
cream.
think that was on purpose of her.
Exactly. This is what I'm saying. Koneko knows more than she lets on, and she is pulling the strings behind what she can. But this baby's through into the works. She needs to keep Raku reliant and under her, and I don't know. I don't know if she wants to stop her from being
She was
hurt.
trying to protect her from being hurt.
I was gonna say because I think Koneko, if she is out as all knowing as you say, then she would know that Hitoshi is homosexual, at least to some extent. So the
I don't
possibility
think
of
she
those two
does.
getting
I don't think
together
she does.
would be pretty null.
Okay. That's
I don't think she
again.
does,
That's what I'm
personally.
saying. I think she's probably trying to protect Raku in this scene. But she also might just want to protect the status quo that she has. It's more of a selfish act.
It could be that. Yeah, she wants to keep the world she has secure. If they start, being together, then something's different.
She
The
doesn't-
dynamics
Something
change.
will
And Raku
change,
might
yeah.
Exactly.
spend
No,
less
no
time
one,
with
no one
her.
likes change.
True. That's what I'm saying. That's why
Yeah,
when other
I can
characters are
see
introduced, it's so jarring. It's another shift.
I can see the problem because they've been friends for years, and then suddenly Hitoshi comes in, and they've only been
I
friends
had
for
the idea that they knew each other too.
so
before
long.
the show
Do you think
started.
so?
Yeah, I mean, he acted familiar with, but then again, Raku-chan acted like it was the first time they met. So
Yes, yeah.
it's really either way. I think the show might leave that for you
Or-
to decide personally.
Koneko might know Hitoshi, and
Yeah, maybe that's it. Yeah, I agree with that.
like
Maybe that's
behind the
one reason
scenes they
why
know
she
each
knows
other.
to try to protect Raku from him because she knew him back in high school or something.
Yeah.
And she's
That's-
like, "Oh, that guy's a troublemaker."
The possible relationships outside of what we see leave a lot up to the imagination, and the implications are there to fill in.
Definitely.
Now, in the next shot, we see all of their comparative sizes or heights, and I thought that might.
There's also a little bit of fan service in this shot too.
Oh, yeah. I think sometimes when fan service hits, it's more of a
This may
distraction
have been
or a
something that was
test.
forced to put in by someone above or something.
Again, I think
Maybe a fan
this was a
requested it.
passion project, and I also think that when this fan service specifically was almost like a test to see if you could pick up on the heights. Raku was shortest, followed by Hitoshi, and then Koneko towered over both of them. This was a good size
Could represent
comparison.
their intelligence.
Really? They're
Raku being the shortest and Koneko being the tallest.
okay. That's fair. I think it just kind of indicates their dominance and their
Relationships.
their agency in general.
I'd also like to point out Raku's tail being so close to Hitoshi's leg, like it's about to be wrapped around.
That
That
is
was very
interesting.
subtle. I missed that actually. Wow.
Yeah, so did I. Thank you for pointing that out.
Raku might be a bit more aggressive than we were letting myself believe, at least. I guess there might be a bit of a subplot in the details there. Interesting.
We need to look closely at these shots.
Raku says something about time period, and Koneko responds with, "Oh, Raku-chan, wasn't that just 5 days ago?" Which lends itself to the theory that maybe her memory is slipping, her memory is fading, she's losing dates, she's losing.
Yeah, she
her
said it was the
mind.
old times, right? I don't know why I'm laughing.
yeah,
That's
the old
pretty
times.
tragic that something like that's happening, but it's almost if you don't laugh, you cry. When it comes to stuff like that.
I know. It's really sad to watch that happen.
Yeah.
It hits pretty close to home, especially if you have a loved one with Alzheimer's or some kind of
Alzheimer's, yes.
neurodegenerative disease.
Yeah.
And this episode is cyclical again. It ends with her in bed, and an expert
And
writing.
thinking.
with foreshadowing, she goes, "I really hope it's not the rabies." This foreshadowing, of course, leads into the next episode where we learn that it likely is, in fact, the rabies, and
Her injury or something else.
well, possibly everything. I mean, the rabies becomes kind of a dominant part of all of her and her friends' lives. Obviously, I mean, you get a terminal illness, it's going to kind of take over.
Yeah, definitely.
Do we
Yeah,
have
I mean, that is how that works typically.
do we have any final notes on episode 5?
Not really. That
I
I
don't
can
have any
think of.
personally.
This is just a nice build up to what's to come.
I
Yeah.
agree.
I'm
This
really
is
excited to talk
laying the
about episode
groundwork.
6.
It's a nice median point
Okay,
because this is the halfway point in the episodes.
it is. And episode 6 comes quite a bit later. There was quite a bit of a hiatus between episode 5 and 6. It really shows too. Episode 6 is very quality. One of the better animated episodes. And that's saying something.
Yeah, there is plenty of animation to discuss in this episode. I'm very
Indeed.
excited to discuss it.
Before we jump into the episodes, I have notes on the intro again. I know we always come back to the intro, but there's just so much.
It's beautiful. It's the best intro in anime history, if you ask me.
I agree, because usually intros, they're kind of glossed over. They just kind of show you what you're going to see. They're just little compilations of animation. But this one,
The thing in that
is
intro
original.
is reused.
Yeah.
Not intro is
It's
used
beautiful.
in the actual show. It's all for the intro itself.
It also
Yeah.
contains just exponential amounts of symbolism, and the voiceover from the DDR machine that they took the audio from actually corresponds to what characters on screen. Here are my notes over it. Feel free to tell me your interpretation. But
I can't believe it's taken us this long to discuss that.
"You're not an ordinary fella," one of the most iconic lines, actually more famous from the series than I think the DDR announcer, to be honest, is over Raku. And we see this as foreshadowing.
It could represent her mental issue.
Yes,
being
and her
not ordinary.
abilities that appear in the following episodes.
Yeah, that too. It could be that.
Another word, "move-in," is over Hitoshi. His character movement has always been emphasized, from his feet, kidnapping, his sexuality.
Birth feet, yeah.
Yeah, all of it is moved. He's a very
Fancy.
fluid character. Another sound bit that goes over Hitoshi is 100 combos. I'm not entirely sure. At the end of the
Just be a random clip, I think. Possibly.
At the end of the series, well, as we've been saying, Hitoshi might be like the galaxy, 100 combos. He also, in my opinion, if anyone is a winner at the end of the series, it's probably him. But we'll get to
Really?
that later. Yes.
I mean, I wouldn't know. I haven't gotten to the end yet.
I can't really make out what is said over the title screen, but "absolutely wonderful" also plays over Hitoshi.
It's most likely very important.
Yeah, so maybe we'll be able to
It could
figure that
even
out
be
later.
a hint to the ending.
Probably the next podcast. We'll try and get that worked out.
Yeah. "Absolutely wonderful" is played over Hitoshi again. Almost ironic, I think. Hitoshi's character has gone very sour. And he's again, his mask of being absolutely wonderful, a real Tomodachi to these Nyan Neko Sugar Girls, is starting to fall down as he pursues more selfish and twisted gains in life.
I love that DS game. Anyway,
Mhm.
What DS game?
it's a 3DS game, Tomodachi Life. I
Oh,
thought
that's a
that'd
good
be
game.
weird.
Oh, that is
Yeah,
a good game.
At least from the gameplay I've seen. Anyway, that's not really relevant. So
Raku wakes up in
Sorry
bed
about
again in this episode. She starts the episode in bed. She's weak. Her limbs are shaking. She's panting.
one of her legs looks larger than the other. I wonder if that's maybe, I don't know, weight from not being able to move as much, going all to one place or something.
Possibly she's standing. One of her legs, like her front of her leg is facing the
Yeah.
camera. The other one is to the
Yeah,
side.
and the other one's further away. It's
Yeah.
a show of depth,
Yeah, I think
lending to the fantastic animation quality and visuals.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not entirely sure. Sometimes this show's animation becomes kind of trippy. It's always a trip. This show is always a trip. It's always a good time.
Always.
But she gets out of bed she's the quietest she's been in the series so far. She's often quite bombastic.
She's sick, so that makes sense. You know,
Yeah,
makes
it makes me, the audience, more concerned about her. And then she
Mhm.
collapses,
Yeah,
which
she does. Violently, in fact.
There's
Koneko.
a interesting scene there. Whenever she collapses, I thought it was interesting that it you get more visualization to it as well. There's like a monochromatic fade, everything being black except for a white outline of her as she falls down. I thought that was interesting. It's a nice stylistic choice.
First of all, it did look really good, and second of all, the black screen was, I mean, again, it's such a change. If there was ever a shift in this show, it would be these episodes, I think, towards the more dark themes. Koneko finds her though, and at first when she looks at her, she looks built very traditionally masculine, which goes back to what I discussed previously, as the anima and animus idea, which is this is Koneko's anima, her unconscious masculine side. And Kaneko's talking. She says, "I hope Raku-chan loves my present." She's clearly still concerned about her friend. She does the most. I think if anyone is more justified in their means and their ends, it is Koneko.
I agree.
Yes, I wonder what kind of present she
Yeah,
brought.
we'll never know. We'll never know.
It's a shame.
like-
We can only
Like the
speculate.
box. It's like the box in was it Castaway? We'll never know what's in it.
We get a close up of concerned Koneko as she approaches the scene. I wonder if Koneko is consciously aware of her manipulation of certain situations, like that confession scene. I think she is. I think we all agreed she was. But there's so many times where she comes off as genuine, and her concern is never as like distant or cut off as Hitoshi's.
Yeah, definitely. She's more caring than him.
Yeah.
I would agree with that.
When Raku wakes up in her bed, she mistakes Koneko for Hitoshi, even though Koneko appears feminine, which I think goes back around to the
I think she's just
animus
desperate to see him and
Hitoshi
hope
has.
everything is him.
You
That's
think
what that means.
that's more of that kind of situation?
Yeah, she's just like, oh, I hope he's here to visit me since I'm sick.
Oh, that makes it almost depressing when she realizes it's
I
Koneko.
think that's what it is, though. She very clearly thinks about the world of him.
That's true. That's true. We get a cool scene where we get like a first person shot out of Raku-chan's eyes when she wakes up, which was pretty cool. I thought that was a fun scene. It also puts us kind of in her place.
Yeah, in her shoes.
The entire last episode almost was just getting us to empathize with her, and now they're doing this, which was, it's pretty solid.
Yeah. Again, the show being high quality as usual.
It's also seems that Koneko carried Raku all the way back to bed, and
That shows how close they are on their friendship that she would do something
exactly,
like that.
and she could just get free reign of her house whenever she wants.
That's
I mean,
also
the
true,
term
but
dead
she didn't.
weight
She didn't make
comes-
it far. She didn't make it
term-
far.
No,
Yeah, true.
but still,
But
it
still,
says
the term
something.
dead weight comes from reality.
Rock-
People who aren't conscious are very heavy.
And
So-
dead weight, Raku often feels like that herself. Clearly,
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I guess this might validate her own low self-esteem, if anything. Raku.
Well, she must not be that heavy if someone like Koneko is able to lift her with her.
Raku's looks
outstanding
incredibly dense. She looks very like heavy.
I wouldn't say
I don't know.
heavy. Yeah, I don't know if I'd say heavy though, but
It's
she has
hard to
a
discern.
heavier feel to her character.
Yeah,
than-
Raku's like full of air or something. So it plays into the
Do you know,
kind of childlike mentality.
And cat. I don't know. Maybe cat bones are lighter. Not super sure, but probably. Cats are probably stronger. Gram for gram of like what they can carry than people.
yeah,
So
comparatively to humans, like an ant is, like a Herculean figure compared to a human.
exactly. So I guess Kaneko's carrying her still says quite a bit about her character, but Maybe not too difficult for a Nyan Neko Sugar Girl to do. They get back, and Raku, when she awakes, the skin she seems to be developing maybe some age, but her skin mirrors the skin we saw earlier of the nurse. As we find out later,
Yeah, I noticed that she looked glitter. That's also in the last episode. She had glitter in her eyes at some point.
I was talking about her skin, but yes, the
Yeah, her
glitter
skin
too,
being
Yeah, but you
more,
reminded me of that. So
more red
more reddish.
than
Yeah,
normal.
like Vetsama has a very close link with spirituality. We find out later, and I think this is
really?
foreshadowing
Oh shoot.
some of the events to happen to Raku in the coming episodes. The background shifts from blue to a light pink during some of these scenes, and I'm not incredibly clear on why. I think it's definitely kind of a mood shift occasionally.
Yeah.
But I definitely something to keep an eye on. The use of color, the use of backgrounds, the use of sound, all of the subtlety in this series is kind of why we
Amazing. It's why we watch, honestly.
and why we want to point this out for other people.
I think
So
the
next
next
on the
scene,
scene.
the
yeah.
next scene of Koneko bringing the tea in is it. It shows her hair almost like a lion's mane, how puffy it is.
It also is the motif of green tea once again coming back, and she drops it, which has never happened before. She drops this motif. Her big
It's just how
fluffy hair.
serious the scene is if she's dropping the green tea.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, I mean, we could also pull back just a little bit with the dropping of the present earlier. I guess that's just maybe how she emotes. She's surprised or shocked. You can tell that she's very concerned about her dear friend here, who is seemingly vanished out of nowhere.
This is a genuine care.
The shot of the
stated
tea,
earlier.
we get a close up of Koneko after she drops the tea. Again, her poofy hair in this scene was welcome. I think this was just them trying out a different style. I liked it.
Reminiscent
I'm a
of what
big
she
fan
had
of
in the
poofy
intro.
hair. Oh.
Yeah, I know you are.
What's that supposed to mean?
Yeah, yellow. What's that supposed to mean?
Just some prior history.
Okay. Anyway, moving on.
Moving on. The empty window that Koneko stares through is on screen for around 11 seconds of a roughly 3-minute episode. So that is a very emphasized shot. That shot is important. That empty window, might I add, the curtains are the pinkish color the background was earlier, and then the background is that blue color.
That scene is truly chilling, knowing that someone she was watching has, for some reason, escaped.
Yes.
Why would you escape someone that is caring for you?
What
Possibly could be that motive?
Anything. I feel like it's more of just a disappearance.
I don't understand why Raku had the urge to escape from her own house. She could have just asked Koneko-chan to leave.
Or why would you even want to leave when you are so sick?
She feels like she's a dead weight. She needs
Maybe
to
she
get
was
away.
hallucinating. Maybe she was having like a fever hallucination or some sort.
Some sort, that she feels that horrible about herself. It's just chilling,
Yeah, it's depressing. Raku doesn't know how to process her own mortality very well. She's terminally ill. She feels like a burden to everyone around her. Even in the case of Hitoshi, she's really not. He's using her almost entirely for his own means. And while Kaneko's love is arguably very selfish, it's not detrimental and it's not cruel in the same way Hitoshi's is, in my opinion.
Either which way, with Koneko at least, Raku still gets some sort of benefit out of it.
Yeah, but she still feels like a dead weight, and I think that might be why she left. This 11-second scene just kind of shows this emptiness and void she's left in Kaneko's life, because it seems like most of what Koneko does is care for Raku, and now that she's gone, I mean, what does Koneko have? The lighting is very dramatic on Koneko in this scene. It's probably the most dramatic yet. And she says she's gone with the wind, which ties beautifully back into our idea of second-class citizenship. This movie, Gone with the Wind, is referencing, has a lot to do with slavery in the U.S. and in the Deep South. It's definitely a reference to keep in mind as we watch the rest of the show and see any references to the Neko girls in Japanese society. Well, I don't think they're literal chattel slaves in the series. This definitely is meant to express the
It might as well be with the way they're treated, though.
possibly worse. Very
As we
disenfranchised.
did, I mean, they may even be because, as we've said earlier, they are going to the vet, not even a regular doctor.
Yeah, but it doesn't
That
seem like
is very dehumanizing.
they are used for work. It doesn't seem like they're enslaved. At least
Well, they
these
could
two.
Quite the opposite,
Psychologically
because they don't really
groomed
seem
for
to
it.
have. They don't seem to have any really jobs or anything.
No, it's probably
Exactly,
hard to get a
you know,
job when you're
They're
disenfranchised.
still being treated as if they're actual cats.
Hitoshi doesn't seem to have a job either, as we can see in
Yeah,
the
but
next scene.
he is obviously a very, troubled figure.
He also seems like he might be rather well-to-do in the way he dresses and acts.
He may have a rich family, which
Yeah.
could
That is
be
true,
as
'cause I was
why
gonna
he's so
say,
desperate.
Before
Top
he was kidnapped, he didn't seem
basketball.
like he had a hobby or anything besides walking around and hanging out with him. And the only real troubleness came after he was kidnapped, which induced the sort of
I think he's
bi-curious,
from a very
homo-curious.
well-off family, which could
Yeah.
be why he's so desperately trying to keep his mask on.
Ooh. Oh, that's an amazing point, Rub, actually.
Yeah,
That's-
that's what I think.
That's the kind of things they leave out there for you to grab onto. And I think that's
Yeah.
definitely
I'm
something
really
to do.
proud of this theory of mine.
We also see another use of the phone, which rings for a whopping 13 seconds, which leaves the viewer to stare at Koneko as she tries desperately to reach someone who could help her, because this is it. And the impact of when that phone is picked up is just emphasized by these 13 seconds.
I think this is also a character insight into Hitoshi. He's so confident he doesn't want to answer the phone too quickly, looking like he had nothing else to do. He wants to look like he was busy and just barely got to the phone in time.
exactly.
When we know he's not doing anything.
See him
on the other end.
just relaxing. He's literally tanning, doing nothing. While Koneko has been working with Raku this whole time, buying her presents, keeping her comfortable.
Yeah,
which,
he obviously does not care at all. about her.
he isn't like entitled to do that. He doesn't have to do those things. But it does show the depth of his apathy towards these girls that he's known for a while, has lived with. One of them is infatuated with him, and he just he doesn't seem
care.
to care.
Do you think he's aware of the infatuation?
Oh,
Most
yes.
definitely. You
He's
have to be
using it.
aware of
He's using
He's
it as
not-
a
He's not
defense.
subtle about it
No.
at all.
He teases
Okay.
her. He teases her. He flirts with
Yeah.
her really, and Koneko, but it doesn't land as well because she seems to be aware of what's happening around her more than Raku,
Hitoshi also has like a handheld phone, like a smartphone almost.
which goes
Well,
back into
he's
his
also
money.
yeah, the whole
I'm pretty sure they did it.
money situation as well.
Yeah,
But even nowadays, in our current time, like in our world, having a landline is like it's harder to get a landline. It's harder to get a landline than a smartphone. At least a flip phone.
which means.
So-
Phone is like the most basic you can get, really.
But this was 2010-ish, and again, this goes back into them being disenfranchised, probably poor. They're working with what they got, and what they got is a landline. And if this is in a universe where landlines are still there because of American imperialism or what have you, then Hitoshi having that smartphone goes even further in telling us how much money he has. And this might even
Well,
go
he's
into...
human. That could be why he's so well off.
He's
Exactly.
not disenfranchised as a human.
He's also living in Japan,
Exactly.
which he initially calls Japan, which
Yeah,
might imply
I think
that
this
he
shows
is
how
an American
has
native.
so much power over them that they even identify themselves as Americans sometimes.
Is Hitoshi Japanese?
Kidding.
Is Hitoshi an American living in the Japanese system that he benefits off of?
I don't think so.
Okay. I also think Hitoshi is likely Japanese, it seems like, judging by his name and his appearance.
His name,
Yeah.
his appearance, and also his mannerisms and how he speaks. I'd say
Oh, that's true. That's true.
more falls in with the Japanese stereotype.
Yes, he does use a fair bit of Japanese even in conversation.
Indeed.
But he does reference a Hank Williams song, which became kind of an American idiom when he answers the phone. He says, "What's cooking, good looking?" Which I guess at this point just goes into talking about the American integration into Japan.
I think he also might have just been trying to seem confident.
Yeah, but still, that phrase is not Japanese, and it's not even entirely very common.
They speak English. They all speak English, and they are speaking English because Japanese is like used as filler
Yes,
flavor
but
word.
all of their names are Japanese.
Because they live in Japan,
Exactly. They haven't completely.
but they don't speak it anymore. Is my point.
Yeah, but does that mean that they? Okay, they still speak some Japanese. Their names are Japanese. I don't think at this point it would be like normal for everyone to know American idioms and have it that super integrated. But it is.
Yeah,
so
but
it's
in
just
this
showing the
universe-
American influence in Japan.
In this universe, they influenced Japan a lot more than they did in real life. Is what I
Exactly.
think. That's why he almost identifies his nation as America. He's just. It might have even been a colony for a little bit. Who knows?
Exactly. It's just again showing that. It's emphasized a lot actually. So I'm glad I have you on here, Rub, because you really point out the national
Obvious, yeah.
yes, which is almost surprising coming from what I assume to be a non-Japanese creator.
Yeah, I think she cares about what is very clearly going on in their nation too. I mean, there's like 3 references to that situation in the show, with the actual culture, Raku's relationship with the squirrel, and arguably Hitoshi, and even the way the cat girls are treated in society.
Yeah, and I think that's just impressive.
I mean, this is the point that the creator is very, very, very trying to make sure that we get.
Yeah, and I think there's even more that come up later, and I just think it's impressive when this show does things on so many levels that can work because a lot of shows when they're put under scrutiny, either the narrative crumbles or the symbolism crumbles, and you're left with kind of a half-baked something that doesn't focus on just one or the other. But this show has a through line that consistently works on so many levels. It's again impressive to me. Every time we get on a topic, I just have to emphasize how much I love this show. I'm sorry, I'm sure that gets very repetitive.
It is a
Yours don't mind.
masterpiece. It is an
It's hard not to
underrated
mention how much you
masterpiece.
like it. It's like saying, "Oh, it's like having trouble not saying that you really love any piece of great fiction." Such as I'm trying to think of another great piece of fiction that's better, or even on the same level as this.
I wouldn't even
issue.
I wouldn't even try, Rub. Come on.
Yeah, I have issues thinking of something.
Yeah. Something as great as Nyan Neko Sugar Girls. But Hitoshi does get the news delivered to him, and his reaction is over exaggerated in my
serious.
opinion.
I mean,
the
I really like
animation
the animation really does show how much he's trying to exaggerate how much he
that's what I'm
supposedly
thinking.
cares.
I don't think it's
Giving
genuine. I
3
think it's overcompensation. Definitely.
Giving 3 whole frames to him taking off his glasses.
It's beautiful animation. It's probably the
When
smoothest in
shot,
the show,
we
and
get
that's
about 1 or 2 frames.
something. It seems like Hitoshi consistently gets the best animation on his character. With the
He's the most
walking
entertaining character
animation
by far.
and the taking off the glasses animation now. And
Oh, fabulous!
yes. But again, I think this
Fabulous
is
and interesting
overcompensation and
reviews,
not
yeah.
genuine, in my opinion.
Well,
That's an
what's he trying to
interesting
prove? No one can see him.
Exactly, but that's just how much he's trying to overreact in real life, so maybe his voice will sound like he cares a bit more.
Ah, so he's getting into character.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And his mannerisms in real life probably track onto, audio, like,
Verbal.
Yeah.
yes.
Maybe he's trying to make sure that him taking off his glasses can be heard. That's why he's doing it so roughly.
The clacking of plastic together, of course.
Yeah, exactly. He wants to make sure that Koneko knows that he's very serious and ripping off his glasses in surprise.
Yes, and she's definitely recruited him for this. They're ready to go. It cuts to Raku, who's on some kind of spiritual journey a la Holy Mountain.
Yeah.
And I'm not really sure if it's real or not, or if it's just created by her rabies-addled mind. She's just stumbling around.
I mean, I think it is real because isn't Well, I guess I should leave this until later. So never mind. Keep going.
Probably. But yes, I always thought this scene was a good lean into the next episode because it leaves you wondering what's happening, what Raku's doing.
Yeah, the spiritual
Where's
journey.
the show gonna go from there?
Yeah,
know, it's kinda
she's
hard to
heading
tell.
towards this white, which you can just think of, oh, is she dying? Because when you head towards the light, that's usually an
Yeah.
indication of the afterlife or death.
Yeah. The show makes use of a lot of integrated ideas that are just integrated in media and kind of twist them. It's kind of when you take a cliche and you can kind of hit the ground running with cliches and then change them, keep people on their toes.
Oh my gosh, you know what's interesting though? In this scene, Raku's skirts does seem to cater to her tail. Either that or she cut it out, or Koneko's intentionally wearing clothes that don't
She
cater
might
to
have
her
done that
tail.
herself. I think.
That's probably true. I think yeah, I think she probably did that herself since in the earlier shots and when they go shopping it seems like there's really nothing to cater to them. I think Raku probably doesn't because she's not as capable with like sewing.
Yeah. This could show the more intelligent
I don't
side
know
of-
why she would care though. I mean, she's obviously a little extra big-breasted, and she wears intentionally tight shirts to somewhat
I
emphasize.
don't think that's intentional. I don't think she's aware of it.
Yeah, she's
You don't think when she rests that ice cream mochi on her
I don't think she is.
on her breasts, she's
Obviously,
not aware
the
that they're
reader
massive?
is
I
very
don't
aware
think
of
she's
it, but
aware of her own sexuality. Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
think so either.
Why would she be? She's a
She
child.
understands the concept of having a crush.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but like that's
her
how
love
it
is
is.
much more pure than Hitoshi. Hitoshi's love is almost entirely sexual. Everything he thinks about this man is him being naked, him yearning for Hitoshi. But when
This is nothing like that.
personality at all.
You don't ever see anything like that.
Yeah,
in,
Raku-
Yeah,
Ooh.
but you're also not really given the
Raku's fandom
opportunity
never
to
show that.
see inside. Hitoshi's brain is literally the only time you get to see inside somebody else's brain is when Hitoshi's having those fantasies. We don't get to see that with Koneko or Raku in this instance. We've never gotten an inside look at what they're actually
Well,
thinking.
we have heard their thoughts before. Specifically, whenever the quote, "I hope it's not the rabies." You're hearing her inner monologue, her inner voice. She's not actually physically saying that out loud. You're hearing her thoughts.
And
We've just never had a core like animated visual of what intense thoughts they're having. Besides the side, oh, I hope it's not this, or I hope it's not the rabies, or Hitoshi is Sugoi. Besides that, we've never really had like a core visual like Hitoshi sounds.
but that's because we don't need one because she's not having those fantasies. She hasn't been distracted mid-conversation by an intense
Yeah.
sexual fantasy about an unrequited love. She's just has trouble talking to her crush. It's much more pure than normal.
Yeah.
I mean, by normal, I mean Hitoshi. Hitoshi's his baseline. Hitoshi's his baseline. That shouldn't be baseline. My bad.
Disgusting.
But
It's sickening, is what it is.
yes,
How he just, doesn't even treat this person like a human being. It's just a fantasy.
but
to him,
Olivia does have a point that Hitoshi's mind is probably the most open to us, and that's why we're able to speculate so much on his own manipulation and motives, whereas the other two remain somewhat of a mystery, especially Koneko.
Yeah. I guess you're right.
In the next scene, when they're going to a 724 gas station, once again putting us in this weird world that's not quite our own instead of 7-Eleven.
Yeah, it's a parallel universe, obviously.
Hitoshi is kind of decrepit looking. His usual look of kind of handsome, boyish handsomeness and confidence is replaced by this gangly figure. He's hunched, which
I
might...
think it's faked. He's faking it.
No,
He's trying to pretend like he's really worried when in reality he doesn't really care at all.
I thought this was kind of a betrayal of his inner self almost.
Mm.
But that is true. It might be like some feigned like hurt or concern, but I thought the almost caricaturization of him was supposed to betray his inner self, which almost comes up in the following scenes when he gets a slushie while looking for his friend. really
Yeah.
expressing how kind of feigned his care is, and he begins hallucinating his kidnapper. This time, as I stated in the last episode, it's not like super intentional. He's not standing there daydreaming. He sees him out of the corner of his eye and turns around.
It's even against his own will at this
But-
point. He's not even trying to
Yes,
anymore.
but he
It's a
feeds into
very
it.
unhealthy obsession.
It's in the
He's
midst.
just kind of looking. He's kind of looking for it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He's in the midst of a hunt for what should be his dear friend, and he's obviously got his mind in other places, especially when he buys something from a gas station. Koneko doesn't. He's not in the game. He's not with it. He doesn't care that much. And his demeanor
Clearly.
doesn't change very much until he sees his kidnapper out of the corner of his eyes. And then it does. There's basically two arcs in this. Hitoshi's, which carries over into Raku's, which is the longest one. And they both end at the same time, and they constantly cross over, and they're both based on character studies of two interesting people, which I feel like the show should have had at least one for Koneko, but I think her lording over everything, being the most in control, would make sense in this two arc series.
I agree. It must be very difficult for this one writer to juggle two arcs at the same time.
Well, yeah, but they do it pretty seamlessly. Koneko, during his hallucination, seems to be aware of his actions and tries to keep him on course. Like, she's aware that he's
Definitely.
pretty, like, I think this serves the point that she's pretty aware of like what's going on. And her voice in the sound design here is very flat. She's not amused at all. She's having none of it. She's like,
Definitely.
yeah. And that's the end of episode 6.
I don't understand why Koneko would invite Hitoshi to search for
His fault.
Raku,
She
She's
needs all the help she can get.
yeah.
he's
help,
a
but
dear friend, really.
but they're going together. So
He-
it's not like they're splitting up. They're going together.
Because she knows that if she doesn't keep an eye on him, he'll just leave.
Yeah, he's also the only other person in Raku's life, and they're probably like having two eyes is better than one pair of eyes,
Yeah.
right? I think
So
she's
he
just
could
trying to
be-
get help.
He could be also there potentially for, I guess, I don't know if I'd say emotional support, but just support in general.
Yeah, I mean, if he doesn't come, what does that make him? He's trying to keep up appearances. Obviously, that's most of
So
what
it's
he
like a
does.
test.
I guess it might be. That's actually a good point.
I didn't hear what you said. What was that?
Koneko's like probing him. She said it could be a test.
Test to see if he'll stop what he's doing to come search for.
Trying to see how much he really cares about them.
Yeah, previous times they just kind of ran into him and then carried
Yeah.
on with their adventure. But this is him going out of his own way to find.
Actually do something productive
Yeah.
for once in his life.
And that's the end of episode 6. That episode, these two were kind of laying the groundwork for Raku's arc that kind of just is at breakneck speed until episode 10, with very little reprieve. Previously, that but there is some reprieve. I believe there is one episode where they go to like an amusement park or something coming up. But
We already watched that one.
oh, you have?
No. Hey, I've watched it. We haven't talked about it.
Yeah, we haven't reviewed that one yet. Well, thanks for joining me. We'll hopefully get back to you sooner than last time. Again, sorry for the hiatus. And, thanks for listening. We love doing this show. We hope you enjoy it, and see you hopefully in less than like 4 months.
3 months, right?
Hopefully.